Hey guys, and welcome back to Z3 Cubing. Inside this package are two of the biggest, hardest, and most overall insane puzzles I have ever seen, so let's go ahead and get right into it. This is the ShengShou 9x9 Morphix, and this is the ShengShou 10x10 Morphix. If you know what that means, you're probably as blown away as I am right now, and if you don't, well, let me get you up to speed real quick. The Master Morphix has been around forever. I got mine from ShengShou in 2015, but I found a custom-made one on YouTube from as old as 2009, and I'm sure that wasn't the first one. Anyway, the idea is pretty simple. You take a Rubik's Cube, which of course has 6 sides, and you cut down all the pieces so that it turns into a pyramid with 4 sides. It's a little bit tricky to visualize exactly what's going on here with the shape mod, but I promise you these two puzzles have the exact same mechanism on the inside. Anyway, over the next handful of years, many cube companies, including ShengShou, would also make Morphixes out of the 2x2, and later the 4x4. When I was getting into cubing, puzzle modder FTUM handmade a bunch of Morphixes all the way up to a 9x9, which was really crazy at the time, but in terms of mass-produced puzzles, these were really our only options. That was until ShengShou came out with the 5x5 Morphix, and the 6x6 Morphix, and the 7x7 Morphix, and the 8x8 Morphix. As you can see, I just had to buy every new one as it came out, and now I'm stuck with a massive Morphix collection. And I guess that trend continues today, because when I saw that ShengShou had released a 10x10 Morphix, I thought, that's weird. I wonder why they skipped the 9x9. Oh well, I guess I'll just go ahead and order it and make a video about it. Oh wait, they just released the 9x9. Guess I'll have to order that one too. And so that's how we got here, me holding two of the craziest puzzles I have ever owned, perhaps the hardest ones as well. Now, if companies like ShengShou have taught me anything over the years, it's that even the highest order, most exotic looking puzzles like these can still turn amazingly if designed well. So let's go ahead and do some first turns. Here's the 9x9 Morphix, and that is just ridiculously smooth. And not only is it super easy to turn, but it also has some of the most satisfying turning I have ever felt. There's just so many little tiny pieces all rubbing against each other in such a satisfying way, yet it's all so smooth, so fluid, zero catching whatsoever. It's like they've mastered the concept of rounding off the pieces and making the cube just loose enough to turn awesome while still being incredibly stable. Just as a point of comparison, this puzzle absolutely turns better than my normal 9x9 from Morphix, and this thing is a cube. In comparison, this thing feels a lot more bumpy, the inner layers are annoyingly tight and it still pops, whereas this thing is just pure smoothness. Anyway, I think I've given the 9x9 enough praise, so let's move on to the turning of the 10x10. Now the funny thing is, I don't even have a normal cubic 10x10 to compare this to. This is my very first 10x10 period, so let's go ahead and try it out. This one is a little bit tighter, a little bit less smooth, but overall it's still incredibly nice to turn. And another thing that stands out is it's also noticeably heavier. I guess that makes sense because even with a single layer, you're adding so many extra pieces. Of course, alignment is always a little annoying with massive non-cubic puzzles like this, but as always, ShengShou does a really good job of making their cubes so fluid that you can just sort of wiggle it like this a couple times, and there we go. We're off to turning the next layer just like that. Now the reason that I'm doing so many turns on the 10x10 when I didn't on the 9x9 is that the weird thing with Morphix is you can actually do a checkerboard pattern only on even layer cubes, which is kind of the opposite of normal cubic cubes. And so here we go. Here's the incredible checkered 10x10 Morphix. Now if that doesn't look incredible, then I don't know what does. Just look at that. Now the Morphixes are notoriously hard to make cool looking patterns on, just because the way that the pieces move around is so much different than what we're used to on a puzzle. Now one pattern that I do know kind of works, also happens to be my favorite pattern to do on higher order cubes, and so I'm going to try and do it on the 9x9 here. That pattern is the super flip, and here it is on the Master Morphix. As you can see, it's super cool looking because it doesn't really change what side any of the colors are on. It really just flips around all the edges, and so it just makes the cube look all bumpy. Now the reason I say kind of works is because doing the normal algorithm actually rotates all 6 centers on the cube by 180 degrees like this, and so what I do is just go around and flip them all manually. I'm sure there's a better algorithm that won't do that, but I'm just lazy, so there we go. So what I'm going to do is attempt this pattern on the 9x9. So of course you start on the very outer layer, go in one layer, in another layer, and finally into the middle layer. So you're just repeating this 4 times. It's going to be pretty time consuming, but let's go ahead and try it. And here we go. Just for reference, I'm now about 30 minutes into making this pattern, and here is the Morphix Super Flip. Isn't that incredible? So as you can see, just like on the 3x3 before, all the colors are in the same places, except now no 2 adjacent pieces are flush with each other. They're all in this weird sort of flipped alternating checker pattern. If you just look at a few pieces at a time, it almost just looks random, whereas if you look at the cube as a whole, you can tell there's obviously a big pattern to it. It's pretty cool looking. And not only did this probably take the longest of any pattern I've ever made, but it was probably also the most difficult one I've ever made because, well, you constantly have to hold the cube, remember how you're holding it, and remember exactly what layers you want to turn when. It's just really crazy difficult. Frankly, it's a miracle that I didn't make some sort of catastrophic mistake. Anyway, the main attraction of these higher order Morphixes is hardly the nice turning and the cool patterns. If that were the case, nobody would spend $200 on these. Did I mention that this one was $100 and this one's $94? Well, actually, you can get 5% off with discount code Z3Cubing at vcubicle.com, links in the description, but never mind that. No, the main reason that people buy these Morphixes is because of the difficulty of solving them. I mean, they are puzzles after all. So what I want to do to end off this video is scramble both of these up and then solve what I actually believe to be my two most difficult puzzles now in my collection. And that's not an exaggeration. My last biggest Morphix, the 8x8, I've solved 2 times now. It took me about an hour each time, and I would say it's the biggest combination of most tedious and most intellectually challenging of any puzzle I've ever solved. Yes, this thing was absolutely harder than the 21x21, even if that one took 10 times longer, and these 2 cubes being even bigger than the 8x8 are probably going to be way harder than that. Well, I guess the main thing is that they're going to be even more tedious, and I definitely expect one, if not both of them, to take longer than any other puzzle currently in my collection. The longest right now is a 13x13, which takes a little over an hour, and I think these ones will probably beat it. So with much dread, I think it is time to go ahead and scramble these up. This might take a while too. And there we go. Insanity, just like I promised. Now before I get working on the solves, I want to really quickly explain what makes the Morphixes so difficult compared to their cubic counterparts, because they are the same puzzle after all, and you solve them in effectively the same order. The final step, 3x3 stage, once you pair up all of the centers and edges, is of course going to be a little bit harder on a big Morphix compared to a big cube, because solving a 3x3 Morphix is harder than solving a 3x3 cube. However, on the scale of something as big as a 9x9 or a 10x10, that hardly makes any difference in terms of time. In fact, anytime that you do lose in 3x3 stage on the Morphix, you actually make up for in edge pairing, because each color has 3 identical edges, which actually makes it a lot easier than the 12 unique edge pairs on a cube. So what makes the Morphix so much more difficult then? That's right, it all comes down to the centers, which are not only way harder on the Morphix, but they also make up the majority of the solve time on something as big as a 9x9 or a 10x10. Now the reason for this is, if you take a look at any one type of centerpiece on a cube, say these 4 very outer ones right here, all 4 of these are completely interchangeable. They're all white, so any of them can go anywhere on the white side. Whereas if you take a look at those same 4 centerpieces on a Morphix, as you can see, one of them is green, one of them is blue, one of them is blue and green, one of them is blue and green but flipped in the opposite direction. So none of these 4 pieces are interchangeable, and you have to put them all in exactly the right spot. And the same goes for any other type of centerpiece on the cube. So for example, all of the green centerpieces are on the green sides right now, but these 2 clearly do not fit, and not even because they're the wrong color, just because they're the wrong shape. So this one needs to go here, and this one needs to go up here. Now, if you just have a simple mistake like this, you can fix it by doing a basic commutator, which is just a special type of algorithm like the one that I'm doing now. But as you can imagine, having to build all the centerpieces from scratch while having to place each piece in exactly the right spot, well, it can get a little bit time consuming. Now you can kind of get away with doing the first 4 centers just like you do on a normal cube. You just have to be super careful with which type of piece you're putting where. But once you get to the last 2 centers, it gets really rough. It's basically all commutators for like 20 minutes. So yeah, that's the insanity of solving a Morphix big cube, and I didn't even mention parity. Gross. Anyway, let's go ahead and get on to the time lapse.